Hello and welcome to this week's review on Dragon Ball Daima. This week I'm reviewing the episode Lightning, and we kick off this review as we always do with these reviews by talking about the positives, and we kick off with the headline positives, all the things I enjoyed about this particular episode. And I have to say is I found the new lore to be integrated very well, the mystery with Glorio is progressing really well, and I thought the action sequence we got towards the end of the episode was... I just really loved it. I've got some notes written down for it, but we'll get into that shortly. And I think that with this review, we're going to kick this off in a slightly less traditional channel, away from this channel, by taking this in a semi-linear way, and we'll address the action stuff towards the end of the episode. Usually we talk about the action at the start, but hey, we'll shake up the formula because maybe this will help boost the viewing figures. This is an episode which I really have to say it does integrate its lore and tells more about this world and these characters in a way which I just find rather decent. Yes, I'll grant you that saying it's decent doesn't sound like the most ringing of endorsements, but we've got to bear in mind that this is a lot of information to get through, and we will discuss the intricacies of the information shortly, but I feel that one of the things that this episode really does as far as that stuff is concerned is that it doesn't make it feel like a lore dump. It presents it in a way which feels natural. Well, human. As soon as I said it felt natural, I started to get visions of my lecturer back at university reaming me out for using the word natural when I should refer to it by other wings, because naturalism and what have you, theatre, forget it. The thing that I did like about it is the fact that this discussion about the Supreme Kai's personal history, the history of himself, his siblings, the nature of his race, and all the mechanics of that, I think that it was handled in a way which just felt like it integrated well within these characters. That it was just a natural series of questions that these characters would ask in a situation like this. It doesn't feel like a case of, okay, right, everyone settle down. Time for the lore. If you're not interested in this, go make yourself a sandwich or a cup of tea. We could be here for a while. No, it isn't done like that. It's done in such a way that it does feel conversational. It feels like it's done in a way which, yes, these are questions that these characters would naturally ask and naturally want to know about. I do know some long-term lore hounds that are going to be thrilled at the fact that they're not totally throwing away the guidebook's lore on the origin of the Kais. I think they're called the Daijenshu books, the books that released towards the late 1990s, early 2000s, I think it was, where they discussed various aspects of the lore in greater detail. I made reference to it a couple videos ago where I discussed like the origin of the Kai when it looked like they were going to change and throw that out. And at this point it seems like he is tweaking that slightly, as at the very moment at least they're talking about specifically the Glind, the race that the Supreme Kai belongs to. And it is this semi-adaptation and modification of the lore. Here in this case they're suggesting that yes, they do come from trees, yes, they are born from fruit. I will grant you that this is exactly what I was expecting from this, particularly bearing in mind I've seen the little illustration that has popped up in videos here and there discussing the Kais and what have you. I was expecting this tree to be more like a tree of life kind of thing, like the thing that you see in Norse mythology, with the fruits that they're coming from being apples, as that's kind of what it's illustrated in one of the Daijenshu books, but that isn't the case, and they all just come from these very strange onion-looking creations, which, sure, I like the design of that. It has this very distinct otherworldly look to it, which does help to sell this race. I did expect something a little bit more... I don't even know the right word for it. Something a little more spiritual, something a little bit more mystical. I mean, it does look mystical enough, even though it looks more, well, conventionally alien biological than something I was imagining. Again, as it currently stands, it only seems as though this is referring to the origin of the Glind. The other Kais and their origins isn't discussed, and maybe we'll find out more about that later on, maybe we won't. At this point, it's kind of hard to say, given how regrettably Akira Toriyama isn't here anymore to clarify any of that. Though I will say as though that whilst this is retconning and adjusting a lot of things that, let's be honest, certain fans may not exactly be thrilled about, one of the things I am happy that they did change is that they retconned the thing about the evil Kais, the Makaioshin I think that they're called. In the original lore, from what I remember it, the idea is that from this tree you'd get... the fruit would drop down, and regular fruit would give you the Kais like King Kai that we know, and the other Kais from the filler stuff, and that the golden apples would give us the Supreme Kai, and the all those kind of guys, and then you'd have rotten, dark, nasty fruit that give us the evil Makaioshin, and I'm glad that they retconned that, because I'm not keen on the idea of the Makaioshin just being born evil. Yep, say what you will, but I'll be blunt, I ain't comfortable with it. Let alone as a justification as to why a character is evil in a story. I mean, sure, for kids stuff, born evil, sure, but for other things, I don't really like it, but we'll move on from that. I am glad that it ends up making it so that these characters, the Supreme Kai siblings, are down here out of their own ambition, their own desires, their own dreams, their own plans and schemes, more so because, oh, their apple was a little bit mouldy, and as such they became one of the evil ones, and it's destined because they got the squishy nasty one. And I like that fact. I like we're moving away from that, and they got a motivation for that. Granted, they're not exactly saying explicitly what that motivation is, but I think that we can easily roll this down to it just being a simple case of, well, their brother became the Supreme Kai, and as such, I can imagine that they're a little bit jealous of that, and they're wanting to gain power their own way for their own means, and that's what's brought them down into the realm of demons. And it does redraw them in a way, and I mean that in a more metaphorical sense. We knew that the sister was probably some form of no-goodnik, some form of baden, but her brother, when we were introduced to him in that first episode, seemed more like a flunky, more like a stooge, more like a companion to the slightly chaotic, bungling evil of King Goma, more so than some outright malevolent force. And, well, literally, given the way that those two characters are drawn when the Supreme Kai is talking about them, yeah, it kind of just exemplifies the fact that, yeah, these guys maybe weren't what we're thinking that they were being, and that they might well be the big bads of this entire series when we actually get to that point. And I think that they might well end up being, because it does feel as though their position in this particular power structure is not totally circumstantial. I mean, the fact that they're both within the power structure of the demon realm, that they are part of the court of the big king of it all, doesn't seem accidental. It seems that they obviously have a grander plan in mind. They aren't really there to help Goma, and I don't think they were really there to help King Dabura either. They are using Goma as a fall guy. I suppose that they're intending to usurp him at some point and to put someone else in power, possibly Glorio, possibly the Supreme Kai's brothers, possibly some other entity, and possibly they're going to be using all this life energy that been drawing out of the lower margin to make Glorio or someone else or themselves more powerful. Who knows? I mean, I am starting to wonder if the whole thing about the Buu Saga might not have been some kind of ploy by them. Because, you know, what happened with the Buu Saga? Did Babidi manage to get control over Dabura, and Dabura ended up going off to get killed? So maybe these two guys set that all into motion, or at the very least set into motion the assassination, the death of Dabura, so that it could set up their power play. I mean, whether or not the storyline is ultimately going to be as intricate as that, I don't know, but the possibility that something like that could come along, I find fascinating, because that really recontextualizes the entire Buu Saga, or at least the part of it in which Dabura is in a way which that would really spice things up, and it would do it in a way which adds to the lore, adds to this world, adds to this story, rather than taking something away from it. And for people that always felt that Dabura as a character was underutilized, underused, well, now we got a circumstance in which he can be used, and he actually has a greater purpose in all of this, apart from just being a kind of cool-looking bad guy. I will say that it is all, regardless of what it may or may not end up evolving into, I think it is presented impeccably well. The artwork and animation is great. The use of colour is great. That gradient that we have on the Supreme Kai siblings when he's talking about them, and how it gives them this strange, uncanny look to them, something that clashes with their natural skin tones. It really does set them out as a way in which to say, right, you really need to pay attention to these guys now. Whether or not we'll be seeing them anytime soon is another matter, and I do feel as though they're a bit conspicuous by their absence, particularly bearing in mind that they may well end up in turning to the big bads in the end. But still, I think that it's all handled very well. The pacing of it is very good. I think that it lands exactly where it should do. It's not too long, it's not too short. I mean, like I mentioned just before, this could have easily just become one big lore dump. It could have been this thing that overstays its welcome, just keeps going on and on and on without it feeling like it's really going anywhere, or something that it feels as though it's got to where it needs to go and it probably should have been quiet an extra 2 or 3 minutes ago. Which, granted, you could say the same for most of my reviews, but we move on. I think that it hits the tone just right, and it really does play into the idea that Glorio might be this suspicious character that he was certainly hinted out to be in the previous episode, and particularly bearing in mind the suspicious look that he gives at the end of this little lore discussion sequence. And I will admit that look that he gives is something that I was hoping that this series would avoid, because in the previous episode I did praise the fact that we didn't get the suspicious looks with him when looking around, looking enigmatic and moody with the da-na-na-na-na-na-na mysterious music playing in the background kind of thing, which regrettably we pretty much did that this week, which, yeah, I mean, it's not that subtle, but hey, it is what it is. Though, to be fair, I kind of feel as though they didn't really need to do that, because almost the exact following scene, we end up getting into something that really does make him out to be very, very suspicious. We have Glorio talking to the evil scientist Supreme Kai's sister lady. I mean, that itself is a far more damning thing than him just looking kind of serious and stoic, bearing in mind that's his default expression for most of this bloody series. Like, this guy doesn't seem to have any emotion apart from just, I need to work now to make money and to get these people to where they need to be so that, yeah, that's pretty much just the look that he has on his face, this constant stoic, enigmatic appearance, this just blank that he has in almost every scene, apart from when he gets whacked towards the end of this episode, but that's a thing we'll discuss shortly. Like, yeah, look, I'll be honest, the whole thing about him potentially working for evil scientist lady, or at least someone within Goma's court or something, I kind of expected would be the twist, or at least some other ne'er-do-well, some other villain. I was kind of expecting it to come up. I will admit I was expecting it to come later. Like, maybe this would be the thing they'd do for a mid-season twist. This would be the thing that they do before a mid-season break, because I'm going to be honest with you, I really can't see them doing an episode over Christmas, but hey, watch me be wrong. Though, to be fair though, this has to be said though, that granted that whilst he might well be working for them, it still doesn't mean that he is a wrong 'un, but, you know, we'll discuss that in a moment. But I still have to say is that I am still rather surprised at the fact that you have so many other broadcasters on YouTube who have talked about Glorio as being the smuggler with a heart of gold, like a Han Solo kind of guy, but there's been nothing to suggest that that would be the case at any point in this series thus far. I mean, you could have that as a default feeling. I mean, his design does seem to have certain echoes of that character, but there's been nothing about his actions, about the way he's carried himself, that has made me feel that he's anything other than just a hired gun. He's doing everything by the book. He's doing everything because he needs to. He's focused on the task at hand. His task at hand is to take these characters and take them up to see the evil scientist ladies that she can do whatever to them, right? That's pretty much what the thrust of this is, or whomever he's really working for. Now, granted, sure, don't judge a book by his cover, but again, this is a guy that seems very focused at the task at hand. He's going out of his way to make sure the deal is done, that he gets to this wherever he needs to be, more so than he's ever really focused about, say, the needs of the group. He's not really concerned about them as people, as individuals. More so, he's more concerned about just, we need to get them to this place. This is my job. I'm sticking to it. I mean, yes, this episode does just go out of its way to just say, yeah, he is working with the evil scientist lady. Though, to be fair, though, he might be trying to play her, though. You know, he might be working for her now, but he might turn against it when the time is right. Maybe he's working for somebody else, and this is just a scheme so that they, for want of a better phrase, expose themselves and expose the evil so that they can be punished. We really don't know, but we'll soon see where all that goes, though it's entirely possible that this could all end up boiling down to just a power friendship thing kicks in, like he betrays the characters and, oh, he starts getting doubts, like maybe he finds like a good luck friendship bracelet in his pocket, and he starts to think, oh no, I've done the wrong thing. And when it just looks like Goku and his friends are about to meet their doom, he comes in and makes the sacrifice, and then he has to be revived using the evil dragon demon world Dragon Balls, and ooh, fun times or whatever. Anyway, whatever. Look, given how enigmatic he is as a character, given how very little personality he really has, it's kind of hard to say where he's going to be going one way or the other. And to be fair, given everything, yeah, if it turns out this is just the guy that the character from the Dragon Ball Xenoverse games is ultimately based off of, yeah, I would totally see that coming, but whatever. We'll deal with all of that as we go forward. Now, this episode, of course, is notable as this feels like it should be the real return of Super Saiyan. This feels like this should have been the moment where Super Saiyan was brought out properly. The tease from last week I don't think was needed, as this is the week where it's broken out. Now, granted, it isn't quite to the same dramatic level as I hoped it would be. I think that a situation where Goku's struggling to handle it for that long, kind of similar to what we saw in GT, would have been better, I think, more so than just, oh, he can do it. He could just do it now, and there is no consequence for it. I suppose you could label that as a complaint about Super Saiyan more generally, but again, I think there should have been a little bit more of a dramatic build into this. But still, with that said, this still gives us a pretty thrilling action sequence, and it's probably, for me, and this might be a controversial thing to say, but this is probably the first time that it's ever really felt like Super Saiyan as a form actually has legitimate power behind it. I know that's going to sound absurd given how many series of Dragon Ball that we've had, given how many fights in which Super Saiyan has been involved in, given the sheer scale and spectacle of it all, but I say that the reason why I feel this way is purely and simply because the fight sequence itself is so well animated, and it helps show just the sheer gulfing power between these two characters, and just what Super Saiyan can do as a form. Too much, way too much about Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Super and Dragon Ball GT for what little that it did was just fight sequences where it was just with people blicking around the arena and people just throwing punches endlessly. There wasn't really a sense of power. There wasn't really a sense of just physicality to it. And in this fight that we get that. And when we do get that, we get it in such a way as though it genuinely feels as though Super Saiyan is making the difference here. How Goku carries himself, how he's present on the battlefield, how he's present within this fight shifts from the moment he gets Super Saiyan. It presents it as being this genuine shift, this genuinely powerful thing. Oh sure, there will be some people who argue as to what grade of Super Saiyan this is. Frankly, that really doesn't matter for the sake of this, as in this moment it gives us a sense that this is a genuine power rather than just a buff. It gives it a sense that this is something that drastically makes the difference to it. And even with Glorio's magic lightning powers, that isn't able to stop him when Goku can literally just stop the lightning. He can punch the lightning so hard that it stops. Like, that is a fantastic visual. Everything about that fight and the impact and the weight of the fighting itself, particularly that final blow against Glorio, is just great. It feels as though that it has this fusion between the kind of fights that Dragon Ball Z probably should have had with just the practical scale and the practical feel of the fights from the original Dragon Ball, and I truly do enjoy it. I think that it is a fantastic little fight sequence that it gives us a taste as to what may end up coming later on in this series, particularly when we start to get to the latter half of it, when no doubt the whole fusion thing will get cracked out. This episode, it just feels like in parts like a classic Dragon Ball episode, yet given the action sequence itself, it has tints of Dragon Ball Z to it, and I really do enjoy that fact. I do think that the whole thing with the Minotaur is fun for what it is. I would have liked a little bit more with them, but at the end of the day, it's perfectly fine, it's fun for what it is, and again, it does have a feel like something from classic Dragon Ball, even if we do have this strange shift of gears to, okay, now we need Glorio and Goku fighting because we need something more spectacular here, I guess. But whatever, that's fine, that's perfectly fine. But with that said, let us get into the negatives. And I will be honest, I don't really have many negatives. I mean, there's the weird continuity error with Goku. You know, let me put it this way. Where did the toilet roll go? You know, you see Goku, Goku wants to go to the toilet, he wants to make a poo, so he's given the toilet roll and he goes behind a bush. Talky, banter, he comes back, right, Okay, go on with the rest of the adventure. Where did the toilet roll go? Did he use all of it? Did he leave it behind? Did he eat it? Who knows? It disappeared. I mean, sure, in the grand scheme of things, it's not the worst continuity ever that there's ever been, let alone in this series. I mean, sure, whatever, but it is a weird little thing to that he just didn't, but whatever. Aside from that, I just think that well, as a criticism that's somewhat improvised, because, well, I can think of it in the here and now, I think that the whole contrivance of getting Goku and Glorio to fight, as thrilling as it was, just felt very, well, contrived. It felt laboured. I don't think it was really needed. It was just a case of, oh, let's have a fight to see who fights the big guy. Sure, why was this needed? I suppose in some way that the reason why Glorio had the fight was mostly due to just to test Goku's power so that it helps the evil scientist lady. But we'll soon see where all that goes later on. Well, that said, let's get into the overview, and I have to say that this is a fun episode. There's not really much else to say with it. I think that it balances its lore and its action very well. It is feeling as though we need something a little more substantial here to really kick things out of the park, because whilst I do enjoy these more classic Dragon Ball feels to it, there is this wider story and conspiracy at play here that just feels as though it's been largely forgotten, so we'll see how that's explored in future episodes. With all that said and done, however, let's get into Comment Corner! It's time for Comment Corner. Our comment comes from Big X1, who says, and this is referring to the previous episode titled Pansy, "This was a fine episode, but I wanted more. It's another episode where the character it is named after doesn't do as much as you would expect. Thank you for your comment, and, well, I can see that being the case, and I can understand that. I do share that feeling to a certain degree as well, but it was mostly an episode sent of just establishing her more so than it was necessarily about involving her. Like, the naming conventions of these episodes has felt a bit strange to me. Like, I will, again, this might be another controversy to say, but I don't like the word salad titles that Dragon Ball Super has had. I'm perfectly fine with them being a lot more short, a lot more succinct, but in certain regards, it does feel as though this has gone the opposite way, where some episodes just feel slightly mistitled. Don't know what you would have called the previous title otherwise. I mean, the skits just sticking to one-word titles, but whatever. But still, that's all I have to say about it. We'll soon see where things will go. With all that said, however, I just want to say thank you all for listening. Thank you all for watching. Yes, this is a quick wrap-up, but I've just seen how long the video is going on for. Thank you all for listening, and see you next time. Goodbye!